Yo, what's going on, APUSH peeps? We have Key Concept 5.1 for you today. This is the revised edition, the most up-to-date video you will find on Key Concept 5.1. Before we begin, it's shout-out time. Shout-outs to Miss Ellington's class in North Dakota. So cool, North Dakota. You're the first that I know from North Dakota watching my videos. Mrs. Terry's class at LCHC, Mr. Baker's class, and Ms. Clay's class from Texas. Thank you all so much for the support. All right, let's take a look at Key Concept 5.1. It states the United States became more connected with the world, pursued an expansionist foreign policy in the Western Hemisphere, and emerged as a destination for many migrants from other countries. That's from page 53. If you want a link, check the description for a link to the curriculum framework. Some big idea questions you should be able to answer by the end of this video. What were the social, economic, and political impacts of Manifest Destiny and westward expansion? And what were reasons for and goals of the nativist movement that emerged during this time? All right, let's take a look at Roman numeral 1. It states popular enthusiasm for U.S. expansion bolstered by economic and security interest resulted in the acquisition of new territories, substantial migration westward, and new overseas initiatives. So not only is the U.S. expanding within the present-day continental United States, they also are expanding beyond its borders. Now, what were reasons for westward migration? Well, there are arguments for access to natural and mineral resources, especially gold out west. The California gold rush of the 1840s we see. Comstock Lode was a mine for silver, and settlements were built around resources. So you literally see towns popping up around these resources. You also have economic opportunities, this idea of the safety valve theory, which will emerge a little bit later. But this is the idea that one could always pack up and move out west and make money. So even if you are a poor factory worker in New York City, for example, there's always a safety valve of moving out west as a farmer and making a decent living. And a third reason for westward migration was religious refuge. We have groups like the Mormons, who were led by this dude, Brigham Young, to move west to Utah because they were being persecuted for their beliefs in other areas. Reasons for Manifest Destiny. Now, before we start talking about Manifest Destiny, be familiar with this visual. Super, super, super important. You definitely need to know and be able to break it down. Notice how it's very clear and bright over here, and it's dark where America is going, but it looks like Columbia here will be bringing the light with her. Also notice the different modes of transportation. You have wagons, you have railroads, you have Columbia stringing telegraph lines, and you have farmers moving out west. This dude's got a pickaxe in his hand, so he's probably going to look for gold or some sort of minerals. And Native Americans are being forced further and further west as well. So what were some reasons for Manifest Destiny? There was a spread of U.S. institutions and beliefs. A lot of people felt that the U.S. should expand democracy and its government across the borders. There were also economic motives for access to land. A lot of farmers, again, wanted to be able to gain more land out west. And there were different ways that the U.S. acquired land. One, through the Mexican-American War, the U.S. defeated Mexico and gained what's known as the Mexican Cession. This area over here, California, and these areas in blue. So essentially, the U.S. gained 1/3 of its size from the Mexican Cession. There's also negotiations, things like the Gadsden Purchase, in which the U.S. gained this little area of land in yellow, and they hope to build a transcontinental railroad. Now, please take a moment if you have not already. You can even pause this video. YouTube Jimmy Fallon Gadsden Purchase, and it will be some of the funniest 4 minutes of your life, I promise. Also, the Oregon Territory, up here, the U.S. settled with Britain along the U.S.-Canadian border, and they established the boundary at the 49th parallel. Now, this land acquisition did lead to debates over things like slavery. David Wilmot was a congressman from Pennsylvania, and he introduced the Wilmot Proviso, and he sought to ban slavery in the Mexican Cession. And this is kind of the idea of the Free Soil Party, which sought the non-extension of slavery. So the number one debate will be over slavery. Will this newly acquired land be free or slave? The status of Native Americans and Mexicans was the debate. How would they be incorporated? Mexicans, after the Mexican-American War, were given a choice to become U.S. citizens or move to other parts of Mexico, and something like 90% of them chose to become U.S. citizens. But there was debate over the treatment of them U.S. government encouraged westward expansion in a number of ways. The Homestead Act was passed in 1862 and established homesteads like the one in the picture here. This would provide 160 acres of land with a promise to live on and improve the land for 5 years. And the government also provided subsidies or gave money and land to railroads to expand out west. During this time, the U.S. also sought initiatives with Asia. You have Matthew Perry and the opening of Japan in the 1850s. He goes over. He's like, hey, what's up, Ross? You want to go to Japan? Little French joke for you. And the U.S. begins trading with Japan, and clipper ships emerge, and these allow for trade, faster trade with other countries, in particular China, which the U.S. sought to trade tea with. And missionaries were established in China to spread Christianity also. So let's take a look at Roman numeral 2. It states in the 1840s, 1850s, Americans continued to debate questions about rights and citizenship for various groups of U.S. inhabitants. We have immigration from Europe and Asia. And when we're talking about European immigrants, there's two in particular we're going to talk about. The Irish. They tended to settle in cities in the northeast, and they were mostly Catholic. And they came over because of the Irish potato famine going on during the 1840s, what's known as the Dark 40s. Germans are the other European group during this time that they tended to settle on the frontier as farmers in the Midwest in places like Ohio, particularly Cincinnati, and then even St. Louis as well. And many immigrant children attended parochial schools or private schools, and this would really upset many Americans. Asian immigrants during this time tend to settle on the West Coast, and the Chinese came over in large numbers in the 1850s. They would work in gold mines, factories, and they also did farming as well. And later, we'll talk about in period 6, the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882 forbid Chinese immigration. And both groups of immigrants, the Europeans and the Asians, they tended to settle in ethnic communities, and they would preserve their own cultures. If you've ever been to a New York or San Francisco or Washington, they have Chinatown. That is a section of that city that is a specific ethnic community. We have the emergence of Nativism, which is the fear, hatred, distrust of foreigners. And here's a very well-known political cartoon you should be familiar with. We have Irish here and Germans over here. And notice they are stealing the ballot box. They tended to vote Democratic. A major argument that nativists used against groups like the Irish in particular were that the Irish were Catholic. So this nativism movement is heavily anti-Catholic, and they sought to limit immigrants' political power. I can't stress enough how important that is. They wanted to limit immigrants' political power. The Know Nothing Party emerged during this time. This was an anti-immigrant, anti-Catholic party, and they sought to limit the power and influence of immigrants. I can't state that enough. Please make sure you know that. During this time, we also have conflicts with Mexican Americans and natives. In 1864, while the Civil War is going on, we have the Sand Creek Massacre, in which a Colorado militia attacked Cheyenne Indians. They killed over 100 Indians, mostly women and children. We have the Battle of Little Bighorn, which is also known as Custer's Last Stand. This is where natives attacked and killed Custer and his men. And the U.S. sought to assimilate many natives with the expectation they would adopt white ways. And this will be a continuing theme into period 6, where we'll spend a lot more time on it. All right, some test tips for you for 5.1. For multiple choice and short answer, be able to identify and explain reasons for manifest destiny. The impacts of the Mexican-American War on slavery. Hint, the debate will be over whether the land should be free or slave. What were ways the U.S. encouraged westward expansion? What was nativism? What were causes for it and examples of it? And for essays, how did westward expansion lead to tensions over slavery? I can't stress enough how often that has been asked in some variation in the past. And comparing experiences of immigrants with another time period. And when we get into time period 6, you'll be able to answer that a lot more. All right, guys, look forward to seeing you right back here for Key Concept 5.2, where we'll get into the presidency of Abraham Lincoln in the Civil War. I thank you guys very much for watching, and have a good day.